The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild had 4 major dungeons. They weren't like the dungeons we've seen in previous Zelda games. There were no boss keys or mini-bosses, just you activating 5 terminals so you can activate the main terminal to take back the beast. Although at first I wasn't a fan of these dungeons, they do get better and better after each playthrough. In this video, I'm ranking the 4 main divine beasts in Breath of the Wild. This list will not include Hyrule Castle, as it is an obvious number 1 spot, and I am merely focusing on just the divine beast. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 4, Vah Rudania. I expected a lot out of this dungeon, mainly because of the long Death Mountain climb which takes place before you enter the dungeon. But also because in previous Zelda games, the fire area usually had the best dungeon. But in Breath of the Wild, it had the worst dungeon. It's the shortest, it doesn't have a very good theme, and by far the most boring. The only part that I actually somewhat enjoyed about Vah Rudania was going outside of the dungeon to look for terminals, as I really liked the atmosphere. But other than that, this dungeon was a huge disappointment for me. Number 3, Vah Naboris. By far the hardest dungeon in the game. The boss was very difficult, and the overall dungeon was confusing. But that's not a reason not to like the dungeon. There was not a lot to this dungeon at all. It mainly consists of just one room where most of the terminals are hidden. The theme was okay, but not the best. Vah Naboris is pretty much tied with Vah Rudania for being my least favorite dungeon. However, Vah Naboris is better by ever so slightly, as it was actually difficult and it was a lot longer, but both dungeons are very boring. Number 2, Vah Ruda. Now on to the good dungeons. While the dungeon choice was completely up to you, most people started with Vah Ruda, which is a really good dungeon to start with. The theme is very catchy, and going up the elephant trunk and gliding off it was a lot of fun to do. Typically in the previous Zelda games, the water dungeon did not disappoint, and neither did this one. Number 1, Vah Medoh. It was extremely tough deciding if I liked Vah Ruda or Vah Medoh better. But in the end, I went with Vah Medoh, mainly because it reminds me of my favorite dungeon in Twilight Princess, the City in the Sky. The view is phenomenal. Also, the theme has got to be my favorite dungeon theme in Breath of the Wild. The boss fight did not disappoint either. And that concludes my Breath of the Wild dungeon ranking. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys later.